From a small plane crashing into a golf course to a large airliner breaking up in midair. Here are the top 10 air disaster videos of all time. Number 10. Japan Airlines Flight 123. On August 1985, Japan Airlines Flight 123 was flying from Tokyo's Haneda Airport to Osaka International Airport when it started to rapidly lose altitude. But when a passenger plane goes down and the footage is streamed live on YouTube, things go from bad to horrific. In March 2015, the Germanwings Airbus A320 was flying from Spain to France when it went off course and flew into a mountainside. It landed at London's Gatwick Airport without any problems. But shortly after takeoff, the pilots realized that they had a serious issue. Something had gone very wrong. The pilots fought to keep the plane stable, but it was obvious that something was wrong. In 1988, an Airbus A300 was flying from Tehran, Iran to Bandar Abbas, Iran when it was mistakenly shot down by the United States military. At 10:53 p.m. on June 1999, American Airlines Flight 1420 was trying to land at Little Rock National Airport when it overran the end of the runway and slid off the slick, rain-soaked tarmac. The plane went through a fence and came to rest in a field. 11 people died and 113 others were injured. The pilots had been trying to land the plane in poor weather conditions, and even though they had aborted the landing several times, they ended up landing the plane too fast and too low. This caused them to overrun the runway. Which one shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to stay tuned for more amazing videos. The U.S. warship USS Vincennes fired 3 surface-to-air missiles at the plane, all of which hit their mark. The pilot had been drinking heavily before the flight, but his blood alcohol levels were under the limit of intoxication. During the flight, the pilot became agitated and started screaming at passengers. The pilots managed to pull the plane out of its dive, but they had lost a lot of altitude. They tried to recover from this, but they were unable to do so. At 1:45 a.m. on October 1999, the plane broke apart and all 217 people on board were killed. The crash was caused by the pilot's deliberate action. But why would a pilot crash a plane with 200 people on board? That's because the pilot was Egyptian and he had fallen in love with an American woman. He didn't want to return to Egypt, so he decided to crash the plane so that he could collect the life insurance for his passengers. What a sick man. He even threatened to crash the plane. His behavior was so erratic that the cabin crew decided to tie him up and restrain him until they could get him help. While the pilot was restrained, the plane lost altitude and hit a mountain in the Caspian Sea. All 96 people on board were killed. The plane was over international waters, but the U.S. military assumed it was an Iranian F-1 for fighter jet. All 290 people on board were killed. The plane was at 32,000 feet when the right wing separated from the fuselage and the plane started to fall. The pilots tried their best to keep the plane level, but they weren't able to. The plane was then torn apart by aerodynamic forces and it broke up in midair. Of the 225 people on board, only 7 survived. An investigation into the crash revealed that the plane had been overloaded, which put extra stress on the wings. When combined with metal fatigue, this caused the wings to break off. A full investigation into the incident took place afterward, and the U.S. admitted that it was at fault. The U.S. paid a multi-million-dollar settlement to the families of those killed. Passengers looked around nervously and wondered if they were going to survive. After some time, the pilots were able to stabilize the plane and make an emergency landing. When investigators looked at the wreckage, they found that one of the engines had failed and sucked in some of the other engine's hot exhaust gases. This caused the engine to explode, leading to the sudden violent shaking. One of the engines had caught fire. They immediately put the aircraft into a left bank and headed back to Gatwick. As the plane approached the runway, the pilots hoped to land safely. But at 10:38 p.m., the plane touched down hard and burst into flames. Out of the 153 people on board, 263 survived. The fire was so intense that it destroyed the entire tail section of the plane. The accident was caused by one of the engines failing, which led to an electrical fire. The crash was streamed live by one of the passengers, giving an inside view of the crash. Fortunately, there were no survivors, so no one was hurt on the ground. The co-pilot who was supposed to be monitoring the flight deliberately crashed the plane. After locking the captain out of the cockpit, he knew full well that what he was doing was wrong, but he still did it anyway. How do you think such a thing could happen? Let us know your thoughts below and stay tuned for more updates. The Boeing 747-100 was at 37,000 feet and plummeting toward the ground. On December 29, 1969, the crew departed New York City for Miami, but they never made it. The pilot had inadvertently engaged the autopilot mode with incorrect settings. The plane continued past its destination, went off the radar, and then began descending into the Florida Everglades. The plane hit the water and broke into 3 pieces. Of the 170 people on board, only 77 survived. This was the first fatal accident involving a Boeing 727. A strange thing happened during the investigation. Some people claimed to have seen the doomed plane, but when questioned later, they couldn't remember seeing anything. Other witnesses said they heard a loud noise, but again, they couldn't remember hearing anything when questioned later. The crash ended up being blamed on a combination of factors, including pilot error, wind conditions, and the lack of airport beacon lights in the area. People on the ground watched in disbelief as the jumbo jet lost over 20,000 feet in just under 3 minutes. It was later discovered that a faulty repair to the aircraft's rear pressure bulkhead was to blame for the accident. There was no way of knowing this at the time, though, and the pilots did their best to regain control of the plane. But at 10:50 p.m., it hit a mountain and broke apart. All 520 people on board were killed. A similar accident had occurred with another Japan Airlines Boeing 747 2 years earlier. But the faulty repairs were not properly communicated to the maintenance staff. This is the deadliest accident in Japan's history and the deadliest single-plane crash in the world. No. 9. Germanwings Flight 9525. When a passenger plane goes down, it's bad enough. Number 8. Eastern Airlines Flight 935. Eastern Airlines Flight 935 was a scheduled passenger flight from New York City to Miami, Florida. Number 7. Turkish Airlines Flight 1950. In 1974, Turkish Airlines Flight 1950 was flying from Istanbul to London. Number 6. British Airways Flight 029. On June 1982, British Airways Flight 029 took off from Tokyo and was heading to London when the plane suddenly began to shake violently. Number 5. Iran Air Airbus A300. Number 4. American Airlines Flight 1420. Number 3. Aeroflot Flight 593. In 1994, a drunk pilot was at the controls of an Airbus A320 that was flying from Moscow to Hong Kong. No. 2. China Airlines Flight 611. In 1999, China Airlines Flight 611 was flying from Taipei to Hong Kong when part of it broke off mid-flight. No. 1. Egyptair Flight 990. On October 1999, Egyptair Flight 990 was flying from Newark to Cairo when it suddenly started to drop. What did you think about these videos?